nobody knows. It's no mystery when you're in that inner circle because everybody's watching the same film and they pick up, all right, yeah, this is probably where it's leading. And then that correlates to the field on who gets more reps the next day based on how practice went and how the evaluation of the game film went.
Hey, welcome in. That was former Michigan quarterback John Navarre talking about position battles. And guess what? Today we've got a former Wolverine, and he's going to be talking about position battles. And as former Wolverine is on the line now, Jim Scarcelli joining us. Jim, it's great to see you. How are you?
Hey, I'm great, Danny. The Wolverines are in camp. And it bringing back memories of the old hot days at South Quad, but it's a new world, man. These guys are in the air-conditioned hotel and staying in style, so it's a different deal. They're get a good night's sleep, but the Wolverines are up and going. And Danny, real quick, I want to talk about before we get into it. I want to talk about the Wolverines lost a teammate of mine. A great Wolverine by the name of Bob Popowski. He was fighting a rare disease that he's had for about 5 years. And he was a good player, a team guy. He was out of Chicago. He was an offensive guard. And he went on, after he graduated from Michigan, he went on and he served our country. He ended up being a lieutenant colonel for the Army. And he went on to officer training school after Michigan, but was just a great American, a great Michigan man. But he passed this last Tuesday. And I just want to throw that out there that Bob Popowski, we just called him Pop. You're in our hearts, you're in our prayers, and rest in peace. We love you, Pop.
I read a story about Pop, and not only serving in the military, but he may have the distinction as the longest serving Wolverine in the military. If my memory serves me correct of reading that story over the last 2 weeks. So quite a military career.
Yeah, Denny, just a guy that was totally respected by his teammates. You know, sometimes, you know, the general perception is, you know, who made all league, who's the all Big Ten, who's the, you know, but the players, you know, our form of respect is just, you know, we look at guys differently, and he had total respect for me and so many of our teammates that just like any other guys that, you know, we're all Americans. Pop was an all-American in his way and had total respect of his teammates, coaches, and that's the kind of guy he was.
Great eulogy there. He will be missed. And let's talk about what show everybody and then talk about what we're going to get into today. We already mentioned the position battles. You heard John Navarre there at the top, echoing some things that you have said over the summer about looking at every rep, looking at the film that night, and then, you know, going to the practice field every day, the competition. You hear the coaches say that, but it became a little clearer, you know, this summer. And then yesterday, listening to Navarre, we're also going to talk about Michigan compared to some of the NFL teams, some of the concepts and whatever you're thinking about there. Also some recruiting and what's going on there. And then last week, the Big Ten coaches had things to say about Michigan and their success last year of winning the Big Ten. And we have many of those quotes that we are going to talk about today, Scar. So without further ado, there's the submarine, the Michigan submarine. That's where they're at right now, right?
I love Coach Harbaugh, some of his terminology, and you know, he's just basically saying, guys, we are in the submarine. We don't talk to anybody other than other Michigan players and coaches, and we are bunkered in. And that's all we're doing is we're focused on getting ready, getting better, getting ready for Colorado State, and that's the mindset. I love it.
All right, well, let's start out with position battles, and there are a few, and one that gets talked about the most, as is no surprise to anybody, is the quarterback battle. What about the position battles? What are you thinking about as we are just day 2 into camp?
Well, Danny, I'm just gonna say what I'm gonna be looking at that first game, because right now the coaches and the players, they came out of spring ball. The coaches have an idea in their mind where the depth chart is after spring ball. And they went through summer, lifting and conditioning. Probably not much changes then. But now we get into camp. It's tough to overcome wherever you are on the depth chart if you're not, one of the top guys. But it can happen. So now there's going to be some scrimmages soon. And the guys will be, positions will be, again, up for grabs based on how well you play. But the positions I'm going to be looking at big time are number one is the edge position. We believe Mike Morris is a solid starter there, but I think there's three guys that are battling for that other spot. I think that Taylor Upshaw will probably get the first crack as the outside edge guy, but I think Harrell and McGregor are going to be battling. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that I think by the end of the year, we will see four different guys start at that position. I mean, last year we had Ojabo start a game, Harrell started a game, and we had different players that worked in there based on their performance. So I'm going to say you're going to see four different guys start at that position. So I want to know, I think those are the first four going in. I want to see where TJ Guy stacks up. But then I want to see who the fifth guy is at that edge position. They moved Julius out there, who had been playing inside, and then the highly recruited freshman Derek Moore. So that's what I'm looking at there. I think there's three guys battling for that outside position, the other edge position. But go ahead, Danny, give me your thoughts on that one position group.
Yeah, Julius, you mentioned is Julius Welsh off, which you talked about. I don't know if it was last week. It might even been a weekend before, the week before that he had moved to that end. And I did see that yesterday online when they revealed the roster that the Julius Welshoff had moved out there. Yeah, Ojabo and Hutchinson, they had so much production last year, but Harrell did get some starts. So it seems like at times, I don't know if he's a forgotten man, but he played a lot. And if there was a team that you thought was going to run the ball, he in some of those games got more snaps than David Ojabo, talking about Jalen Harrell. So, I mean, he's good against the run. Certainly, they thought he held up better than Ojabo last year. And if he can get to the quarterback, maybe he could be a 3-down type guy, or maybe they will have him in there in kind of situationally, and he'll get some different starts. But that's the one thing about what Mike McDonald did last year and what we're going to see from Jesse Minter is that situational football. You're getting in there wherever the ball is at on the field. If you feel like you want to have your best run support in there, you may go with Harrell. I don't know who would be that. That's it could be somebody like Derek Moore. Like if he just shows that he can pinpoint the quarterback, put his hand on the ground, or maybe stand up and just go after it. Maybe you see him in different packages.
Yeah, but as a former defensive coach, it makes it a heck of a lot easier when the guy you have in there in all those positions can play run and pass. And they're like a Hutchinson, he makes my job easier. He's going to play the run great. He's going to give me pressure. Ojabo was questionable against the run. Harrell didn't give us the pat. So we want to see which of those guys is going to give us both. So there's a lot of great players in that edge room. Competition, man. And now looking on the inside, okay, I believe Mozzie and Jenkins are solid. I'm not, again, when we open up that first game, I'm not worried about Mozzie at all. And let me just say this as a former coach. As people are looking at Michigan, we're looking at I know as a former coach, that first game of the year, I never worried about my returning starters. Those guys, we already know Mozzie Smith can play. We know Junior can play. We know Morris, and we know he can play. It's them other guys that, I'm not worried about Jenkins. It's the other guys that are going to get their first crack at being the guy. It's one thing to rotate in, 8-10 plays a game, but it's another thing to know all week you're the guy. And you're going to get the majority of the reps. And how are you going to perform with that kind of pressure and that responsibility? And, I think our guys that are going to be in those positions, they played a lot in the past. I think our coaches did a great job preparing them. But Mozzie and Jenkins, I think, are going to be solid. The guys I'm looking for, though, is who's going to be the third one in? Who's going to be the backup guys that are going to rotate in? in that inside DT room. There's 9 guys that are on that I think McHugh, our guy, had on his list there that are in that defensive tackle room. You know, you got the freshman Graham who looked good in spring. You got the kid Benny from Detroit. He looked good. Then you got this freshman coming in, this kid with this great, 350-pound kid that can run. And you got Ike in there, and then you got the kid that transferred from UCF. So there's a lot of competition in there to find out who's going to be the guys that will rotate in for Mozzie and Jenkins. So that's what I'm going to be looking at. I want to know who those first 4 guys are. So everybody, all them young guys are battling to get to that 2 deep because they're not going to overtake Jenkins and Mozzie. But who's going to be the guy to get into that 2 deep? So, people ask me about playing at Michigan. It's one thing to get a scholarship there. But looking at this edge room, this defensive tackle, it's another thing to get on the field. That's even tougher. It's as tough as it is to get a scholarship there. It's tougher to get on the field. And I know these guys are all going to be battling to get to that 2 deep. But the good thing is there's a lot of real good players in that defensive line room.
Yeah, it's the first chance that we can say their names with some numbers next to them. Not all of them, but Kenneth Grant, big Kenneth Grant, number 78. You mentioned the UCF transfer, Cam Good. He's number 99. And then you mentioned Ike Iuwanu. He will wear number 92. So we'll see. And the one thing about these first 3 games, we have been saying it till we're blue in the face, an opportunity really. They may be thinking it. The coaches may be planning for it. We're all saying it. Everybody's gonna get a chance to play in those first 3 games.
Yeah, and it's so crucial, because what we do and what you do as a coach is you try, as you're going through the season, you're trying to prepare for game 1 the following year. That's what the smart coaches are doing. So I'm going to get into the offensive line next. Danny, I'll cover DBs and linebackers next week. But our offensive line, we've got 6 guys that have played a lot of football. They're all seniors, though. Our offensive line is, there's really the only position up for battle is that right tackle spot with Barnhart and Jones. But the rest of the guys are returning. We know we got the big center from Virginia. So there's not a lot to watch there. But the thing that I'm concerned with, but it's an easy problem to solve, is there's 6 offensive linemen that are our top offensive linemen. We know that Barnhart can play just about any position there, but they're all seniors or 5th-year seniors. We could have all new guys next year. So I'm going to be looking big time at the young offensive linemen. Who's going to be the 7th offensive lineman in the game? Who's the first center? Is Crippen the guy they're going to go with? Right now it appears coming out of spring that he's the backup guy. But I want to know who's the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th? Who are the guys that we're going to go through this season and get ready for next year? Because the smart coaches are always preparing for game 1 as they go through the season. But as far as offensive line goes, that's how I see it. I see a concern there because we are so 5th-year senior heavy, which is what good programs want in their offensive line, which is a good thing. And we have good players behind it. But that's why those first 3 games are crucial to get those guys reps.
Great point. I think watching the spring game as the game wore on, you looked at some of the 2nd and 3rd string offensive line get in there, and you saw a big Jeff Piercy who was in there, and a freshman, although he's a few years removed from high school, Connor Jones. I think those were the backup tackles, and both of those guys I think are like 6'7", 6'8". It was pretty noticeable looking at them out there. But yeah, you're right. They could have a entire new offensive line next year. I was going through, as you told me you wanted to talk about some of the position battles. I was just looking at Michigan's players that they have returning not starters per se, but how many U of M career starts on defense. And you can pretty much just go through this and almost figure out who's going to be there on your 2 deep. If you start on that defensive line, you know that Mozzie Smith is going to be there. Chris Jenkins has 4 career starts. And then however you want to line it up, from Taylor Upshaw, you already mentioned. Mike Morris has 4 career starts, and then you get to the linebackers. Junior Colson, as a true freshman, had 7 starts, and then Nakai Hill-Green. We don't talk about him much, but he's had 7 career starts, and same thing with Barrett. Michael Barrett was starting in 2020 and made a play on special teams against Minnesota. I remember that first game, came in and had a start or 2 last year in the mix at linebacker. You see these safeties. Michigan lost both of them, but you do have a little bit of experience there. R.J. Moten, I was surprised, 5 starts, and then Rod Moore, as a true freshman who wasn't even in for spring last year, had 4 starts. So you can almost go through and think about who's going to get the start. There'll always be some surprises there, but pretty much just on the experience. And as you mentioned, you don't worry about those guys, but if people are thinking about, hey, who's going to be out there and start for Michigan game 1, you get a pretty good read by just looking at the career start.
See, that's a beautiful diagram you have up there, Denny. That is a sign of a great coaching staff that is really developing guys and developing depth, playing a lot of guys. See, when I see Jenkins with 4, and Morris, and Harrell, that was certain teams where we had an extra defensive lineman in the game. That was probably Iowa. It could have been Wisconsin, and that's where you have that. But it's a great thing. And to have guys that have played, because there's nothing like game reps to get you prepared for game 1, like we are going to be going into this year.
Antoine with a question for Jim Scarcelli, saying that Michigan has so much depth on their D-line. If I'm a coach, I would almost constantly rotate them in if I could and have them just go all out every play. Just keep fresh pressure. It will be tough to play against.
I totally agree, but it's a fine line because especially if you look at the front, the front guys, the edge guys, the inside guys. Mozzie can probably go he could probably go 6, 8, 6, 7 plays, and then get them out for 3, get them back. You want to play your backups and keep everybody playing hard, but at the same time, you got to you want to test those guys that are in the game, your starters too. You want to have them tested a little bit, but I agree with it. No one should play tired. You've got enough depth there. You rotate guys, but then you don't want to go down. You go down to your 3rd string guys, and now you're rotating almost too much where you're not developing your 2nd string guy. So it's a fine line. I never forget my first year starting, and we're playing Northwestern, and we're hammering them. We're beating them 35-0 in the 4th quarter, and I'm on special teams, and I'm starting to, I started and played every game down on defense, and the coaches were making substitutions. They were playing the backups, and my coach didn't take me out. And he grabbed me, and because I saw what was happening. He grabbed me and said, "You're not even close to being good enough yet." He grabbed me by the collar, and that's what he said to me. He wanted me to continue to get reps, to continue to get better, even though I was dying and I was tired, and the 2nd string kid wasn't getting any reps, which I totally disagree with now as a coach, but that was the philosophy. So you got to find that fine line of taking reps from the 2nd team kid to give them to a 3rd team kid, because you got to get ready to play that big game.
TC asking about Rayshon Benny and expectations for Rayshon Benny. You mentioned Benny there on the inside. Saw a little sprinkling of him in the spring, but yeah, he's got every chance in the world. You got Mozzie Smith. Chris Jenkins is penciled in, but after those guys, who knows? Really, I mean, they're going to find out in the next 2-3 weeks. Because you're not going to play Mozzie every down, and maybe it will be Cam Good, but Rayshon Benny's got a huge opportunity over this next month, and then certainly in September when he gets in there, he could be a pivotal player for this team.
I watched him. There's no doubt he could be the 3rd guy, no question. He's a big, strong, tough, athletic kid. He could give us some pass rush from that position. But you play inside for that Michigan defense, you better play a double team. Number one, you better play the double team and not get knocked off the ball. And then it all starts from there. And then you got to play the zone play, and you got to try to give us some pass rush. But there's serious competition there. There's a lot of good players there. He's a kid that will be in the hunt to get that 3rd spot. But
right.
Also, Denny, we will play 3 inside guys in certain fronts. We will play a 3-4. We'll play 3 of those inside guys. So certain teams in certain schemes that we have, we'll have a 3-man down defensive line front.
Come to find out, the Scar loves Michigan, played at Michigan, watches Michigan, but he also watches other college games. And then when he goes to sleep on Saturday night and gets up on Sunday, he does watch some NFL. And you wanted to make a point of some things that you are thinking about in the NFL as it relates to Michigan.
I just saw where the Patriots picked up Brad Hawkins, I think. I think we had it on our website.
Correct.
I just think that there's certain teams and there's certain, I heard Andy Reid said he can't get enough Michigan guys. You remember hearing him say that, Denny? I heard Andy Reid say that. And Bill Belichick loves Michigan guys. And I think that's because I just think it's because of the culture of Michigan. You get a Michigan guy, he's going to be a team guy, because that's the word Michigan has been pounding on since 1969 when Schembechler rolled into Ann Arbor. All the coaches after that have pounded that concept of being a team guy. So I think pro coaches know they're getting a team guy. They're getting a smart guy, because Michigan does a lot. Academically, you got to be smart, but Michigan, both sides of the ball, I think we have done the last few years a lot of different things defensively. So you can test the guy mentally. You can ask him to do a lot of things mentally. I think that's what they think they're going to get from a Michigan guy. But I think it's a compliment when a guy like Belichick has like 7 guys on his roster from Michigan. That Belichick knows what he wants in a football player, and I just think it was just a great. When I saw that, I was like, man, that's Michigan, because he wants smart, tough team guys, and I just think it's a compliment to what we're doing in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, and I don't know if it just goes back to Brady, but like Winovich, if you ask people who's the best coach ever in NFL history, almost everybody's going to come back and say Bill Belichick. So if he's running a New England Wolverines over there, yeah, that's going to speak highly of the program. I mean, I don't know if you can, if there's any way, around that. I mean, it does. It's a U-Shea down the line. It speaks well of the program when you get the best to do it. And if there's one thing that, Belichick, there's a lot of preparation and getting his team ready for game day, but personnel wise, that's up there too, right? Where you'd say, man, those are his, that's right where he's making the difference. And so, bringing out a guy, I wouldn't be surprised. Hawkins, he was kind of an underrated guy his whole time at Michigan. He made the big play. I don't know if they win that Nebraska game if it wasn't for him. He made the play to win the game.
Yeah. So I saw it, and I just think Michigan, they know what they're getting from Michigan. They're getting guys that are tested mentally. And they have the attitude, the right attitude, responsible team guys. And we got to keep recruiting those kind of guys, and that's how we win championships.
Recruiting, that gets us to the next point in Michigan recruiting. Now, they had the barbecue. Did they have a special weekend in the summer back in the 80s where they would invite everybody in? Was it called something different, or is that a 21st century development?
That barbecue is a Rich Rodriguez thing. He brought that in. It's back in my day, Danny, we had the camp, the Michigan camp, which was the biggest camp in the country, and they were evaluating guys. Guys did not get early offers back in the 80s. The early offers started with Joe Paterno, I believe, was the first one in the mid-90s. Joe Paterno was the first coach that I had heard of that offered guys before they played their senior year. So that's the first I heard of it. So now we've got this barbecue deal. That was, from what I understood, it was a Rich Rodriguez thing. He brought it in. Brady Hoke continued it, and Jim has continued it. And it's been a big thing. And but you got guys coming in all summer long up to Ann Arbor to visit. But I think that's where that started. And I think I just wanted to mention this, though, that I know that I was trying to get a feel. I talked text Zach Libby, our guy who's really on the ball with all the recruiting. You want to know what's going on? Our team is awesome with the Maize and Blue Review, our recruiting guys. But I tried to get a number. How many guys do you think Michigan offered? He said it could be anywhere between 150 and 200 right now have Michigan offers out in the United States, internationally. And then these coaches have to decide which of those are you going to really hammer in on? Where are you going to zero in on? Where are you going to give most of your attention? And he thought it was somewhere around 20 that they're really focusing in on. But then there's a lot of guys that don't have offers that Michigan really likes. They've had them in, they've talked to them, maybe they've tested them, and they really like them. But they say, you know what, we want you to play your senior year, and we're going to take a closer look. So, there's an upside. There is an upside that we haven't gotten all these kids, these top 250 kids. Yeah, we're all a little frustrated that we haven't done better. But there could be an upside that we get to make further, real, precise senior year evaluations on kids that we may prevent being wrong on a kid. So I guess that's all I wanted to say, that I know that Michigan has a lot of guys that we're looking at that they've had in. We're evaluating them. They like them a lot. But we want to see them have great senior years. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that because I remember I worked at camp. I got to know many of the Michigan coaches. I remember Stan Parrish telling me Stan was recruiting Victor Hobson. You remember Victor Hobson, Denny? Highly recruited, really good linebacker, and assistant coaches have many players that they're responsible for recruiting. And I remember Stan saying, I spent 80% of my time on Victor Hobson. I spent very little time on these other guys, but that was his philosophy, that he said, look, I was responsible for a bunch of guys to recruit, but I was on the phone every day with Victor Hobson, and he was making the point that, I wanted to make sure we got the guy we really wanted, and he spent more time on him than other players they're recruiting. But we're in a sit and wait situation on a lot of guys, and it could end up being a great thing when some of these guys that other people are unsure of have great senior years and play better than what a lot of people are expecting.
Yeah, recruiting is a real wild thing just to watch on the outside looking in. I'm no different than, your average fan. You look, you say, hey, man, this guy's a 5-star. That's pretty exciting, if you're able to get him. And when you're not getting 5 stars and you're not getting highly rated 4 stars, you say, ooh, what's going on? And then, name, image, and likeness has been front and center this entire offseason. And then when it gets down to it, we all know, like, if just half of it is getting the player, the other half is being able to develop them. And then if you're a coach, I don't remember exactly where Victor Hobson was ranked, but there would probably be a half dozen guys back then that people would have been, I would much rather have had this guy. He was ranked higher, and Victor Hobson was a tremendous football player. So that all comes into play. And the weird part for me, Scar, is I root for Michigan to get the highest rated players. I want them to get all 5 stars and 4 stars and everything else. And then once they get their class, I tend to root for the guys that, like Ronnie Bell, and, players that, did not come in with all of the, the gigantic stars and all of this. So it's a weird ride, talking about recruiting.
Yeah, also, sometimes with some of these guys that are highly recruited, already offered 5-star guys, or 4-star guys that everybody thinks is going to be, and then they go through their senior year. I just wonder how this plays out when a guy you think is a certain kind of player up to his junior film, and then now his senior year, you're like, wow, I don't know. I'm seeing a guy that's getting pushed around a little bit. Maybe he doesn't have the effort or this, that, or whatever. And then you see some guy that you weren't really sure on really elevate. Now you're already committed to that guy that you've seen his performance maybe not give you what you thought. So I just want to throw that out here, that those are things coaches are juggling, and that this wait and see can be a positive thing also.
Good stuff on the recruiting. Otis talking about Saban and Belichick, the championships that they have produced. That sounds correct to me. Saban with 7, Belichick with 8 Super Bowl rings. Wow. It seems crazy when you see it, but I think that's right. How about that, Scar?
Yeah, I heard Nick Saban speak at a clinic when I was a young coach, and I thought I knew football, man. This guy was using terms. Much of it I didn't understand, but he was a brilliant guy, and he's a very smart coach. And he's no. But I remember when he was at Toledo and recruiting this area, recruiting a school I coached at. But yeah, he took a quarterback out of Clintondale High School way back in the day. But paid his dues. Great coach.
Yeah, and he was up at Michigan State for a little while as well. All right, speaking of other schools outside of Michigan and in the Big Ten, in Indianapolis, this caught your eye. Many of the coaches, if not all of them, were asked about what they thought the difference was for Michigan last year in being able to break their drought and win the Big Ten. And I selected. I don't know how many coaches I have up here. Let's see. It looks like 6 of them and the different things that they had to say about Michigan. Let's comment on these. Pat Fitzgerald pointed to Michigan's, it was asked, what about Michigan? What did you see from them last year, which enabled them to win the Big Ten championship? And Fitzgerald pointed to Michigan's efficiency running the ball and said they ran that counter well and they were really sound.
Yeah, Danny, you got. I listen to all their thoughts, and it's interesting what they say and what they don't say. These coaches, but there were some common themes. And Fitz talked about Michigan's ability to run the ball and having 2 running backs. And he talked about when he played, too. But that's when you hear these coaches talk about Michigan's run game. That's when we got to applaud our coaches for focusing on the run game early in the year when people were questioning whether they're, hey, why are we just running? Let's throw it more against these lamb chops early. But we focused on it. We hung our hat on it. We stand for something. We want to run the ball from different formations. So he talked about that. But the other thing Fitz talked about too, Denny, was he thought that our defense was well coordinated. He gave a compliment to McDonald, and that's what I saw too. That our defense was well coordinated. Very seldom where we had guys out of line, but we had a great scheme. So Fitz, he talked about our run game, and you'll see a consistency with a lot of these guys talking about our run game. Go on to the next guy, Dave.
Yeah, it was Tom Allen, Hassan Haskins. You remember they didn't have 2 backs, or they didn't have Blake Corum, so Haskins went for, 27 carries, 168 yards against the Hoosiers. And Tom Allen thought the biggest difference between Michigan last year and other seasons was that they committed to run the ball. He said the defense was really good too, and the quarterback play was better.
Yeah, all these comments, again, we've talked about it. Great, QB play. He talked about QB play and running the football. But he also thought our system. A quote he gave later on in the interview, in his thoughts were the system was good, was better, it's solidified. Because I think we have a system now on offense. This is what we are, and it's not changing. And I think we have a system now on what we're doing on defense, and they're both sound. We can win with what we're doing on both sides of the ball, and that's also something that he mentioned.
James Franklin asked about Michigan, and he said he was impressed that they were able to do it consistently all year long. He said the biggest difference was the defensive ends.
Hey, man, it gets back to the old outside linebacker, the position I played. You got, and what Bear Bryant always said, you put your 3 best players as your defensive ends and your free safety. And I'm just bragging, but those positions are important, man. You got to have guys that can bring pressure. James Franklin talked about the edge. He said that those were the difference in the game. Michigan had 2 guys that could give pressure. And that's why I'm looking at that position, that first game of the year. I want to know, are we going to get pressure from those positions? Are we going to get guys that can make plays, stop the run? So hopefully Morris and Upshaw will step up.
Mike Loxley, the head coach at Maryland, he also emphasizing the consistency word. And Loxley, after he's done coaching, he'll make a fine broadcaster, because I could have written down another 4 or 5 sentences, everything that he had to say. He spelled it out for Michigan. He said their confidence Number one is what he noticed. And then he said they knew who they were, their identity. It was a physical brand of football, establish the run, play good defense and special teams, and they did it consistently. That sounds old school, but, Michigan, they did in a lot of ways. When you're thinking about running the ball, that's toughness. That's a physical brand of football. That's an offensive line that's getting out there and they're aggressive. When you're the one that's hitting instead of going back into a stance, that is tenderizing the other team, and that's what Michigan did. And Loxley really pointed out there. They knew who they were. They established that identity, and then they went after it.
Yeah, I've always said that. A coach told me a long time ago when I first started coaching, you got to be known for something. What are you? What do you run? Are you a guy that runs a bunch of stuff, or do you have a system? Michigan has a system. We have an identity. That's what Loxley said. We have an ID. We know what we're doing on offense. We know what we're doing on defense. Our guys know what they are. And then the confidence comes from doing it over and over and over again, having success. And again, that gets back to those early games last year. You keep doing it and you keep doing it. And then the guy builds more confidence. So when he goes to Iowa City, he's done it many times. And what else did he talked about? Also, Loxley talked about how good we were in all three phases, because Jay Harbaugh was outstanding on special teams also in that game, and we did it consistently. So, yeah, Loxley was right on time with where we are as a program.
Two more coaches' comments from last week in Indy, two messages that are coming in right now. One from AJ, who says, the one major thing that he likes that Michigan is doing is developing more. They're also running NFL schemes, even with the running plays. They're very advanced counter plays, so I don't worry about recruiting. Got a thought there?
I mean, he's right. If an NFL team takes a Michigan guy, an offensive lineman, a tight end, Michigan's where you want to go for. We're going to be right there with Iowa. And if you talk about recruiting, we're going to be able to out-recruit Ohio State for tight ends, certain teams. We run a pro-style offense. We ask our guys to do a lot of different things that they're doing in the NFL. We're going to run the power play. We're going to run the inside-outside zone, and that's what they're doing in the NFL. And we do that with our offense. So he's absolutely right that you want to take a Michigan guy. Ryan Day, he didn't have much to say about. He just talked about we can't let it happen again. He had nothing good to say about Michigan, but that was expected. But
yeah, he didn't want to have him go through it again. Talked about reminding it. He didn't want to make it 2 losses. And then at the end, he said it's something that we don't ever want to go through again. It's been a long time. They were used to winning that game. So, yeah, I mean, it's back to, the kicking up that hatred and focusing on that last game. That's for sure.
Well, listen, every coach that coaches there, in Urban Meyer would have told him back, he coached with, with Earl and those guys, hey, you got to win that game. So many coaches got fired there because they weren't winning that game, so we get it. Our guys understand it too. We got to keep that game, and I like our chances. That's all I'm saying as we move forward.
Yeah, Jim almost got fired for not winning that game. Otis says they'll need to add to their playbook this year, not due to a lesser defense, but the other team setting their defense to defend what was successful last year. What about that? Teams getting an season to review the tape and then
Denny, that's the thing about football, man. Coaches are constantly adjusting. We're constantly playing the mind game. How do we deceive the opponent? Okay, so everything you did last year to me, I've got to make a decision. Do I believe you're going to do the same things? I'm going to do something different too. Everybody's constantly modifying, adjusting, focusing on, okay, what did this guy do to me last year? How did he give me problems? Or how can I give him problems? How do I stop this play that gave me so many problems this past year? And so that's what coaches do. So whatever these teams did against us that we stuffed, they're going to try other things to beat us on. So that's just coaching. And we've worked on it in the spring. And we'll work on it in the fall camp to get ready for those little tweaks that we're going to add to give the other guy problems.
Yeah, I think Michigan is going to throw the ball a lot more. Both of their running backs are really good at catching the ball out of the backfield, so you don't have to run it between the tackles. Not saying that they won't, but both of these guys. Blake Corum is good out of the backfield. I know he had a couple drops, but he can catch the ball, and that's as good as a run. And it's the same thing. Donovan Edwards might be better as a running back catching the ball out of the backfield and just handing them the ball, running in between the tackles. I think you want to throw it out to him and let him go.
Yeah, because we saw that against Georgia. I mean, Georgia did that to us. They isolated our linebacker. They thought they had a mismatch, and they killed us twice. Come out empty, put a running back out, and we had trouble covering them. So, those are things good coaches have. I'll tell you one thing I would do, Denny. If I was in Jim Harbaugh's offensive staff meeting, what I would do is I would pound the table for more quarterback run from McNamara. You remember the Iowa game? We come out empty on a big third down, and we come out and he ran the ball up in there for a big first down out of that empty formation. McNamara. Nobody's expecting McNamara to run the ball. I would run him 3-4 times a game because I know as a former edge player, a defensive coach, that we know when JJ's in the game, there's going to be a more likelihood that he's going to run the ball. But whenever you run your quarterback on some of those zone reads, those things slow down the whole backside on defense. And I would like to see him run McNamara 2-3 times a game. That's something I'd be pounding the table for.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I'd like to see, I don't know if it's more screens, but that's what Donovan Edwards, getting him the ball. They always say in space, but Blake Corum, both of these guys can catch the ball. And, you can, if you got a quarterback that can work that screen game, not all the quarterbacks can. Sometimes John Wegler said that was the toughest throw that he had, was being able to throw the screen, because, he's used to firing it really strong. I don't know, like maybe McCarthy, does he have that touch to just throw that little 5-yard flare out there? That's something I'm going to be looking at. But I think both of these backs in the screen game is something I would like.
Screen is good when you have enough of a drop back game, to set that up. And I hated defending screens, and screens are, Lloyd Carr loved the screen. Michigan was a big screen team under Lloyd Carr. And I hated defending it as a coach if teams know how to execute it. But you have to have enough of a drop back, straight drop game to really set that up. And go ahead to the next guy here, Kurt Ferentz.
Yeah, the Iowa coach said on Michigan that they transformed their vision on what they were going to do offensively a little bit. They got a little bit more committed to running the football. And there it is again, what Michigan did, like committing to run the football. Will they do that again? I agree with these coaches. That is what Michigan did last year. They ran the football.
Yeah, and they're obviously all saying it, and they had some trouble stopping it. But we also have enough of a pass threat. We got enough conflict and chaos in our offense to put defenses in conflict. So I think we got an overall good package. We got quarterbacks that can throw it, and receivers. The better your quarterback can throw and your receivers can catch, the better your run game's going to be. So it all plays together.
Speaking of all playing together, I think this is an interesting question from Tyler, who's asking about what Michigan needs to do to take over as O-line university and let them know that we're coming for that title. I guess he's saying that Notre Dame is that right now. Yeah, well, if Michigan continues this, and if you're an offensive lineman that loves to run block, and you see some of these pass-happy teams, you would think that Michigan, and they just picked up their second offensive line commitment this week, but there's a few more of them out there, and I think the same thing you could say. You mentioned the tight ends, and of course the running backs. Why? Maybe they'll land some big-time running backs, and they got two guys that are ranked as 4 stars for next year in Cabana out of Dexter and Benjamin Hall, who was moved up. He's out of the Peach State in Georgia. So, maybe that is the direction that they go.
Yeah, hey, the way we become O-line U is by just continuing to recruit great, big, strong, fast, tough, athletic, smart team guys that we can develop into run blockers that can block all different types of offensive schemes that we run, the same stuff that many of the pro teams run, the zone, the powers, we run it. And, and guys that can pass protect and the different kind of things that are asked and then have success. Anwino's doing a great thing. Taylor Lewan, who obviously was in a different system, but the more and more Michigan guys that can go out there and succeed, the more it'll help.
Yeah, and team success, I think nothing's going to help more than that. If they can come out this year and go back-to-back and get to the college football play, beat Ohio State, all of those things would help out immensely, if they're able to do that.
Denny, just wrapping up to what the coaches said, I just thought it was great to hear what they had to say. It reaffirms, the direction I think we're going as a program, because they were telling you, look, man, Michigan is they stand for something. They want to run the ball. They had good quarterback play. They had good coaching on defense. They had good edge players. all the things that we're seeing and that we could continue to do. Those coaches are basically telling you, hey, that's what they are. That's what they do, and we don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. What about the practice schedule? You see Michigan that, they come out and they'll just have helmets on for a couple of days. And then they just put the shoulder pads on, and then they will get full pads. I don't know how much they hit anymore. I mean, all those things, those are fine lines and things that they think about a lot, but you already mentioned it, Scar. I thought that they would be over there and sweating it out, not going back, getting massages and being in the air conditioning. But hey, it's 2022, right?
So much smarter, the trainers, the doctors, everybody's so much smarter. For 100 years we had double sessions, and the concept of double sessions was, these guys are just laying around all summer. They're working at the gas station, or they're making money doing that. Nobody's running, nobody's lifting. So let's bring them in 2 weeks early, beat the heck out of them, and then play a football game. So that's what we did for 100 years. And then Nick Saban was the first guy I had heard that said, we're not doing double sessions anymore. I went every season I played in, I started out at like 235. I'd have finished at 225. I'd lose 10, 12, 15 pounds. Played against Ohio State, 220 pounds one year. Lost 15, just you lose so much weight because they're working you, they're running you down to nothing. You don't have time to keep your strength. You're not lifting during the season. So these guys are smarter. They have one practice. They go a lot of non-padded practices, and if he does hit, they'll hit maybe one day, and it's smarter. I like what they have. It's designed to keep their strength. He runs them through the car wash. The car wash is where they get their pads cleaned up, and then they got to soak in the ice for a little bit. And anyway, that's what Jim has got him doing over there. He called it the car wash, but I like what they're doing. Because it keeps their strength. That's the big thing I like. It keeps their strength. But you got to find that right amount of hitting to get ready for game one. So that's always the big question as a coach. As you prepare for that first game, is you've got like 3 weeks to do it. How much hitting do I want to do without beating them up? And but they got to be ready to go. They got to be ready to tackle and live tackling. And so you got to find that fine line of preparation versus beating them up.
And they're already going back and looking at all the film from yesterday, and they will have watched it maybe that same day, and that things that they're going to work on. And, that's going to make a smarter team as well. That's what you had said in this offseason. And John Navarre was talking about the quarterback repetition and how difficult and the reps that they get. And everybody wants to know, how Cade McNamara is, going to fend off J.J. McCarthy. And the answer is, if he goes out there and if they're throwing the ball in a certain period and he makes a couple bad throws and McCarthy makes a couple good throws, well, J.J. might get a couple more snaps with the first team. And that's how it's done.
Yeah, JJ's going to have a hard time, cutting into that situation, because this kid started every game. Cade started every game. He made very few mistakes. Turning the ball over, and the big thing is securing the ball. The thing that would have to happen, I think, for JJ to get more playing time or to overtake him is Cade's going to have to make mistakes turning the ball over. But let's just hope. I just want them to both play. We've talked about it. I don't know. Was John a guy that would have gone? Because he when he talked about the 99, he looked at it more from a negative standpoint, that the 2-quarterback system was a bad thing. Is that the way you got out of that?
No, I didn't get that. I think that what I got out of it is that, he was a true freshman, and he could tell pretty early in camp, that the way that Henson was going, that it was going to be more of a competition, and that, that he thought it was a good thing.
Okay, so he was okay as a former quarterback to have 2 quarterbacks play, because that was a decision Lloyd played. Lloyd made that decision because he had to try to keep 2 quarterbacks happy, and whatever his reasonings were. But
well, you always do it after the fact. But if you go right after the fact, I mean Henson ended up, he had a really good, he was hurt the first 3-4 games. He didn't play his first ever game that he started was at Illinois. And I mean, he hit the ground running. He came out and he was fabulous. And if he would have left and not gone to the Yankees, he would have likely have been a first-round pick in the NFL if he wasn't. I mean, he would have been pretty. I think he would have been a first-round pick. He battled against Drew Brees, right there. He might have been the second quarterback picked. I think Vic would have been the first quarterback picked. So you're talking about a guy that was a first-round talent. And of course, at the time, Brady, was not considered a first-round talent, but he was able to hold him off. But now the further that you go, you said, well, you should have just had Brady because he was the greatest quarterback ever. But you did have a guy who, you thought, and who knows what would have happened if Henson would have stayed and played football. Maybe he'd have been a successful NFL quarterback, and you'd have been talking about, hey, you got 2 guys, that were really good. That's why Lloyd liked them both.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what Jim does. I think we're going to see JJ get a whole series. That's what I would like to see. I'd like to see him get a whole series early in the game, first half, and not just when we want to possibly run him on the quarterback keeps type stuff. I'd like to see him, get a legitimate series and get him truly developed and have 2 quarterbacks. Because we talk about Ohio State. I think I've talked about this last week or maybe before. But they got a great quarterback. Okay, but their offense is very, very quarterback reliant. I think more so than Michigan's is. Because they want to throw the ball. They got these receivers. So if that kid gets hurt, they're going to have problems more so than if we lose our guy. That's what I think is something about our system. Our focus on the run game, that we are not so quarterback reliant as Ohio State would be.
All right, Scar. Well, are you going to, after this, you take a cold shower? Do you jump? Do you have an ice bucket there at the house? I mean, you still work out, right? Do you take cold? Do you have cold therapy or cold treatment that you employ, or you used to just go old school?
I'm just an old beat up has-been. I go lay on the couch, Danny. That's what I do now.
After you work out, you go and take a nap, huh?
That's right. We got football tonight, baby. We got NFL preseason tonight. We got my old team, the Raiders. I was a free agent with them for a couple weeks back in the day, going against Jacksonville. So we got football tonight. JJ is a much better passer than Henson ever was.
I disagree with that.
Yeah, I know. I tell you, I worked Michigan's camp when Drew Henson was a senior. I worked right with that kid. That dude was a man. He was a 17-year-old kid. He's a 6'5", big athlete, and that kid could run. He could throw the ball 80 yards.
Henson was great. Like, if he wouldn't have played baseball, he could have been a great quarterback. I mean, he would have been taken to the first round. So, maybe JJ will ultimately get played, but, I understood why Carr, was trying to keep Henson in there. And I can understand playing both of them. I can understand playing JJ McCarthy in here. I don't really like it, playing both of the quarterbacks. I don't think it really hurt Michigan in '99. It's not the reason that they lost to Michigan State. I think they lost to Illinois that year too. The nightmare on Main Street. It wasn't the quarterbacks. It was the defense. Oddly enough.
Yeah, to answer that question, I know Drew Henson could throw the ball, man. I watched the kid as a senior in high school at that camp, and he was a very talented, but so is JJ. Hey, both great players. Let's see how it plays out for JJ.
There you go. All right, Scar, great job, and we'll talk to you next Thursday. We can't wait.
All right, Danny, go blue.
There he is. Thanks for watching.